Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Here for our weekly "What Is in the Stack." What me and Mike will do on this, we're just going to tackle one topic from the top, talk about that in detail, and then we will go through our respective stacks. We did just post one of these a couple days ago. We want to make sure we keep our weekly, monthly on this. Got a little bogged down with the holidays, so our stacks will be a little bit shorter because we went through those on Saturday, but we still have some stuff to go through. But we wanted to first and foremost tackle a topic that was really difficult for me and Mike personally to hear. Bad news for both of us. A movie both of us liked quite a bit. The Batman. Part two, we got confirmation a couple days ago. It's delayed a year, delayed again. So this has gone from March of 25 to October of 26 to now October of 27, meaning that there will be a 5.5 year gap between these films. For reference, Christopher Nolan's trilogy, I believe, finished in 6 years for three films. This will be 5.5 just between the second part. So I think by the third one, Robert Pattinson's going to have no choice but to play the Dark Knight Returns gray-haired Batman with how they're going with this. Before I talk about my thoughts on it fully, Mike, what did you think about the news? How does that hit you? What do you think, this trend's good or bad for the movie? Like, how are you seeing it?
It's heartbreaking for us DC fans, and it's funny. Like my teenager is now relating to some of the delayed content he's waiting for as to what year he's going to be in high school when it comes out, and he'll be graduated. He told me, Dad, I'll be out of high school by the time I see the next Batman movie. So it was kind of heartbreaking. It's a huge momentum loss. I think it's a self-inflicted wound. Of course, we don't know the gears and the wheels that are in power for these huge studios and how they crank out material. But that movie was designed for sequels, and it was, put out with that sequel intended. It was set up that way, and comic book movie fans expect those to be released in a timely fashion so they can keep up with the story, and that's all gone now. So it begs other questions as to the reason why, like you and I were talking before about maybe it's other projects that they want to see, but it's no secret the superhero movies are, they're in a
Struggling.
little bit of a limbo right now where you know they don't know what's going to win and what's not. But the thing about it's like this is DC Spider-Man. A Batman movie will always win. It did fairly well at the box office, right, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. It did not. It didn't light the world on fire like The Dark Knight or even The Dark Knight Rises, but I think the inexcusable thing of the delay in a time where and I think if you go the historic angle on this, 15 years from now, if we're talking about how did the superhero movie die, there's going to be two huge things. There was overexposure with too many bad films, and there's also going to be in 2021 to 2025 when the superhero movie was struggling, when they needed it most. Marvel failed to put out a Spider-Man movie, and DC failed to put out a Batman movie. And that's inexcusable. Those are your two brands that if you're in a slump, you throw one of those at, and at the very least, a bad Spider-Man movie is going to make $700 to $8 million. A bad Batman movie is going to make that. If you make a great one, you could revive the box office behind it. And literally, when superhero movies have needed it the most, they have failed to use from both studios the two most bankable proper characters that they have. It is inexcusable, especially because we're seeing superhero movies in a tailspin, right? And I guess Batman was early 2022, but we knew like 2022 there was still optimism with superhero films. Once 2022 ended and you started having 23, 24, all the movies losing more money than not, we're in a death spiral as comic book films. And they're literally taking the two most bankable characters and being like, we don't know what to do. We got to get it perfect. And it's like, just make a freaking movie. Because the inexcusable part of them having these two characters on the bench for so long You can't convince me that there's no one in Hollywood who in 5 years can't put together a Spider-Man film or a Batman film. And the thing is, look, I loved the first Batman movie. I liked Matt Reeves' direction. I thought the world of Gotham that he presented was great. I liked the costume design. I liked everything about that movie. But Matt Reeves is not such a solid, bankable name that it's like, well, he can't get it done in less than 6 years, so we can't move forward. There's someone who can make a freaking Batman movie, right? And that's the thing is, if Matt Reeves was Chris Nolan, right? If Christopher Nolan, because at this point he's won Academy Awards, he's done all these things, but he can make an Oppenheimer movie, like $1 billion film, right? He's the thing that sells it. That's a guy who you give as much time to as you need. Matt Reeves, while I like him and I love the version of Gotham, it's like, dude, you don't have 5.5 years to make this movie. We need a Batman movie out. We are struggling. We watched Black Adam bomb and Aquaman bomb and Flash bomb and Blue Beetle bomb, and we're on the death's door with our superhero content. You are sitting on our number one property, and it's like I can give you a Penguin TV show. Again, I liked the Penguin TV show, but what are we doing? The whole universe of superhero films is dying, and you can't get it. And the other thing is, it's one thing if like Robert Pattinson was Tom Cruise, where it was like, well, he hasn't been in Batman, but he's done Mission Impossible and Top Gun, and so the whole time Pattinson, like when Tom Cruise isn't between movies, the momentum is still building because he's probably in two or three other good films that keep his name in the thing. All the people in the Batman, Zoe Kravitz who played Catwoman, Robert Pattinson who played Batman. I haven't seen him in a dang thing since this movie came out. So any momentum with these actors, any momentum with celebrity building, it's almost like it just became a dead end. And like you mentioned, 5.5 years, like it's something that stinks that like I had a seventh grader when that movie came out. He's gonna be done with high school. Like he may not reasonably, he may not live here when that happens if he goes to college somewhere else. That's crazy to me that in that time you didn't make it. And I think that's the other piece that we're missing of this is it's not so much for the older folks like you and me. All of us have something that we fall in love with as fans at a certain point because it hits us, because it's like a touchstone point in our life. What this has is my kid, he watched this with me when he was in seventh grade. His entire high school, this thing was off the page. Didn't matter. Didn't come out. No content in this world. For him, that movie series now falls to whatever else he got, because he's going to find something else to watch in high school. And something else is going to grab his attention. And it's like, it's just an inexcusable delay for a lot of reasons. And I don't, there's nothing that you can do. Oh, we got to get the script perfect. It takes you 5 years to write a script. Five for Batman? You're not reinventing the character. Most of the character work is done. Like that's the other inexcusable part of this is when you tell me, hey, it took me 5.5 years to write a movie. If it's a new independent property kind of thing, if it's a new character and you got to create his origin in the world and you got to establish all stuff, Batman, all the work's done. It's Bruce Wayne. He's an orphan. He's got tools. He's got a gat. I mean, all of it's
You
done already.
you can't tell me either when they finished that movie that there wasn't already a working script for part two.
Or a sequel idea or something. And the thing is,
No, no, there was already a script.
there had to be, yeah, there's no way with as long as movies take that no one was sitting there like, oh, in part two, we could do this. Like, and that's what they kind of are treating it more like, oh, we just threw the first one out. And we literally just didn't know what. And the thing is, it's one thing if the movie had ended in such a manner where it felt like a complete story, right? Like, if the
It was
first
designed that way to be a sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, like when the first Iron Man movie ended, that was a movie that was begging for a sequel. Right? You had the development with Pepper and like are they going to get together and I am Iron Man at the end. And Marvel knew if this is a hit, people are going to want what's next. The thing with that Batman movie, like unlike something like Batman Begins, right, where you could have that movie and it was a pretty full story and kind of at the end he's got the full suit and the signal and while you'd want more adventures, you could go, oh, this was just an origin story. If they had never made another Batman movie after Batman Begins, you could watch that and go, it was a full story, it was completed. Now it's just Batman, he's Batman, and that's all the adventures we know are this. With this movie, the movie ends with the city's flooded. Batman's doing this monologue about how people are going to be tearing the city apart. You have that dramatic ending where he wants to go with Catwoman, but the signal shines. No, I got to go on and I got to fight. Like everything about this was calling for what's next? What's that? They made a freaking Penguin TV show because of what was in the world, and that got well received. To have to go 5.5 years, uh, to me, there has to be something else at play at this. In that, one of the things is, if I put my conspiracy theorist hat on for this, no one from DC will ever confirm this because they're not going to go. I think I don't think it's that the script's not ready. I think DC's delaying it because of Superman. I think with James Gunn's new universe, they're like, you know what? Had the Batman been ready by 2025, we probably would have put it out in theaters, but now it's not ready. Why don't we let Superman come out? And if Superman's superly successful and it makes $1 billion at the box office, maybe we just tell Matt Reeves, hey, man, great job. Appreciate the film. That's it. Right. I think to me, that's the only thing that would make sense is they are waiting to see if James Gunn's Superman is a box office blockbuster. I would imagine if that's huge, we'll start hearing, oh, Robert Pattinson's moved on to other projects or something. Or they go, hey, there is no separate Matt Reeves universe. This Batman is in James Gunn's universe. That's the only feasible thing I can think where this would somewhat make sense. Do you kind of lean that way too, Mike?
Well, we talk about it. We've talked about it several times. How when you have, and also how much, yeah, we've talked about it. How having different versions of the same character running concurrently in different cinematic universes kind of dilutes the name brand, the property, somewhat. It's easier for the normie audience who's not super geeky like us to just go, oh, there's Spider-Man, oh, there's Batman. To have multiple Batmans running concurrently could be confusing. And ideally, in my idyllic world, and I know in yours, like why couldn't Pattinson be the Batman for James Gunn? His films stood outside of the pit of death that was the DCU,
Yep.
and the pit of
DCEU was not kind to
yeah,
anyone.
that was the DCEU in the last couple years. He stood it out and he stood aside. So in that regard, if they had not drawn that weird line,
Well,
they
that's the
could have.
stupid part of this is like you already had with this movie. If you just made this the start of your universe, you already have a successful version of Batman that's created. It wasn't a box office smash, but it was a well-received movie that made money, that had a successful sequel TV series that did very well ratings wise. You've got something on the board already, and now you're basically saying, actually, we're going to build our universe. We're just not going to use any of that.
I think
And
it's
it's
I think it's just hard for the movie industry to digest where the superhero movie is at this place in time. Like you're not going to get billion-dollar movies anymore.
it's going to be few and far between. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna. I mean, that era is over. You're gonna do less of them, and they're gonna make 500, 600, 700, maybe 800 million.
Yeah, I mean,
Hard to
you're going to have
believe
an
that.
occasional Deadpool and Wolverine that crosses a billion, but that's a movie with 20 something years of buildup behind it with
Yeah,
Jackman as Wolverine. Like,
yeah.
that's why that movie was that
So
big.
so this is the new universe, and you're disappointed that the Batman made what, like
It
800,
almost made 800 million, something
800
770 or something
million?
crazy
Like
like that.
that's amazing. And
Well, especially for what it was. The strength of the Batman to me was the next year after the Batman, they released a Flash movie that had a Ben Affleck version of Batman and a Michael Keaton version of Batman in it.
that's
And
weird.
so, and the thing is, like you talked about, the normies, so to speak, of these things, they don't know these universes. They're looking like I remember one of my friends at work was like, okay, I watched this Joker movie. That wasn't Heath Ledger. Was that supposed to be Heath Ledger's Joker? And I'm like, no, it's a completely different thing. And he's like, there
They
was a
don't know.
sequel. Like Harley Quinn wasn't Margot Robbie. Did she not come back for that one? He's like, no, it's a completely different one. And that's the thing is for these movies to be successful, it's not the you and me's who are watching comic book YouTube content and making comic, tracking down to the store every week. You need grandma and mom and dad who've ever liked Batman to walk into the theaters and see something that's there. And again, for DC, this has always been their issue. They have done this, they've done literally with James Gunn's DC. they've created the same problem they had at the start of the DCEU. Because at the start of the DCEU, Batman was already in this separate silo of the Dark Knight trilogy. You literally had your most popular character in some of the most popular comic book movies of all time, and they could not be used in your universe because you didn't design a universe to have it in there. And that's the thing is at a certain point in DC, and I get, oh, well, Chris Nolan didn't want to do it and Christian Bale didn't want to do it. You use the universe anyway. You keep going. You just James Bond it. And hey, Sean Connery's done cool. Roger Moore is James Bond now. And you roll with it and just, hey, part of DCEU canon is the Dark Knight story. Instead, you basically did what Marvel had to go against because the beginning of the MCU, they didn't have access to Spider-Man and X-Men and all this stuff. You are, even though no one controls the rights to your characters, you are largely taking a version of Batman off the board for your universe that's already successful.
It's
It's just
inconceivable.
mind-boggling how stupid all this is.
It's inconceivable. You've got too many decision makers in the way, and not the right creative people with enough pull to pull the universe into cohesion and direction. I mean, maybe James Gunn will be that person, but you don't take a $700 million film off the table and just throw it off to the side because is James Gunn got a different idea for Batman?
Apparently, he's going to make his own Batman called Brave and the Bold that's going to focus on him having a son and Damian and stuff like that. And like, look, I don't think that's a bad idea. If you hadn't just released a Batman movie 2 years ago and a Penguin spin-off TV show set in that same universe, and one thing I think the last thing we touch, I know there's people who go, well, read the Batman. That Batman can't be in a world with Superman, right? That's so serious and grounded, and Superman's so bright and colorful. And I just reject that out of hand. That's the whole point. That's what's fascinating about DC Comics, is that you can
That's the
have Gotham
whole
that is this gothic nightmare, and then there's the world of tomorrow where Superman lives, and it kind of fits because it's like if a
that's
Green
been
Lantern showed up in that Gotham City, it'd look weird, but that's the whole freaking point of the
yeah,
comic books is yes, these worlds that shouldn't exist together do. And that's
that
why we love it. It's so cool.
that's the duality that was set from the very beginning in 1939. You had this hopeful aspirational character, and then you had this dark grungy character, rummaging around the streets trying to fight crime in Gotham. That is just beautifully set up the way the dynamic is. And anyway, Brave and the Bold would be cool, but it would be cool if Robert Pattinson played
And played it.
yeah.
Well, and like you said, the more you do these I think there's a thought that, hey, look, we could have a Batman here and a Batman here and a Batman here. And look, the nerd in me goes, man, I'd love a Batman movie every year. If you told me next year there's a Batman Beyond movie and then the year after that it's another Dark Knight movie, I'd be there. But I think for an audience, they're going to look one, what you end up doing is you splinter your audience because there's the same way we see fights over who's the best Superman, who's the best Spider-Man, right? I think Henry Cavill was a fantastic Superman. I think what killed his tenure more than anything was the ghost of Christopher Reeve, where people looked and went, nope, you're not Christopher Reeves, you're not really Superman. You're not doing it the right way because you're not acting like Christopher Reeves. And so he was never able to shake that fully, right? I think if you would do this with Batman, if you have, let's say, Robert Pattinson, and then I'll just grab a name, let's say like Alan Ritchson, the guy who plays Reacher on that TV show. If they cast him as the new Batman, you're going to have people become fans of him, and they're going to go, oh, Pattinson stinks compared to this guy. And then you're going to have Pattinson guys going, no, Pattinson's a better Bat. And you end up creating this division that doesn't need to be there where these actors are playing the same character, but having not all the same fan. And I think DC's kind of done this with the DCEU already where you have some of these hardcore Zack Snyder fans and stuff like that who are already against everything James Gunn's doing because he fired Henry Cavill and all those people. DC keeps making the same mistakes over and over, and it's just it always reminds me of the sports franchises that I root for. I see them make the same mistake over and over and over again, and that seems to be DC. I really hope it works out. I hope we get a great Superman movie. Lastly, Mike, if you were a betting man, does the Batman 2 even happen? Do you think this actually gets made?
I'm about 50-50 on it.
Okay.
With this delay, I'm leaning more to maybe it's just not gonna.
I would say I am more. I think I was 100% it would happen. I would now say I'm probably like you 50-50. And I think that 50-50 is all the coin flip of does Superman make a lot of money or not? And I
I
think
would
if
agree.
Superman is a gigantic block box office hit, I think we'll probably see at that point them go, you know what, the Batman 2, we just never got the script right. And people have left up that. That would be my guess. Let us know what you guys think. What do you think about the delay? What do you think about DC's on film presence right now? Do you think this is good? Do you think any way, shape, or form this could be a positive thing? Let us know what you guys think. Before we wrap up, we're just going to go through what's in our stack briefly. Shorter stacks for us this week because we just went through this on Saturday, but we both did pick up some stuff this weekend. So, Mike, I'll kick it to you. What is in your shortened stack for this week?
Oh my gosh, I got this amazing um what they call the atomic age of comics on Saturday, and it's just beautiful. 1955. It is uh an EC comic, Tales of Valor. It's at the end when the you can see right here the Comics Code Authority was just introduced, and they were really squeezing EC out of business. But they did put out some really good books. This beautiful cover by Joe Orlando. You can see his signature right there. Amazing guy who ended his career at DC Comics, interestingly enough. Um, and incredible, it's kind of delicate interior art by Al Williamson, um, a great favorite artist of mine. So I am so happy to have this rare EC comic from 1955.
That's awesome, man. So I know this year you and I are going to talk a little more comic history and stuff, and kind of highlight that. I know EC is a publisher that has a really good history that you know a lot about. So I'm sure we'll have some content about what happened with EC Comics and all that in the future. But glad to see you're adding to the stack with some oldies. For me, I was really happy. I went to the store. I picked up the first trade of the Space Ghost comic book that came out. I grabbed the first two issues of this in single form, and then I kind of noticed, like, man, I haven't seen one of those in a while. I forgot to add it to my sub, completely my fault. And by that time, very hard to find. I looked at a lot of shops, couldn't find three, four, five, or six. And so I waited for the trade. David Pepos, I think it's Jonathan Lau on this. Excellent, excellent comic book. Really, really fun. I know Space Ghost from the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I know he had that Space Ghost Coast to Coast thing too at night, but this is a much more serious take on Space Ghost, but it is just a really fun kind of action adventure comic book. It perfectly fits with what you'd expect from the character. I'm trying to find some cooler panels to show here, but I think just some really great. Where's that first appearance of him here? It's just really cool when you see a publisher grab a character like this and they kind of Space Ghost gets drawn quite awesome in this. It's kind of leaning into a Batman-esque vibe for the character, but grip me from page one on this. I reread the first two, read it through. Really looking forward to the next trade on this now. Great, great title. I think had I read it thoroughly, this might have been one of the 10 better comic books of last year. Might have made the list. Really good. So I'll be on that in the future.
I
Hopefully you
enjoyed
guys can
that
check that
first
out.
issue, and I passed it on to an old school Space Ghost fan
Mhm.
who just went crazy. Like, they have a new comic out, and yeah, and it's just great. That whole I'm glad they kept the old Alex Toth design from the 60s, but then kind of modernized it.
Yeah.
Very good comic book.
No, just another example. Some of these indie publishers like Dynamite and Titan and some of these things that are getting properties like Space Ghost. And I think Dynamite's had James Bond for a bit, Thundercats.
Wait,
We're
who's
seeing
doing
some of these
Space
older,
Ghost?
huh?
Is it Dynamite?
Dynamite's on Space Ghost, yeah. So really cool to see that. Again, probably a character that if Marvel or DC got it, would get the Z team on it. You can tell they really put a lot of resources and get into this. It's a great comic. I would recommend it to folks. Let us know what's in your guys' stack for the week. As always, folks, thank you guys for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.